Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Hongkongers line up to get their hands on the first half of the new consumption vouchers. More workers will benefit from a job protection scheme, but the cost shoots up to $43 billion. And daily COVID cases soar to a new high on the mainland. The first half of the $10,000 consumption voucher rolled into people's pockets today. Hongkongers clicked on e-payment platforms to get their $5,000 or by tapping their Octopus cards at several collection points. Joanna Ho reports.
There was a glimmer of hope for Hong Kong's battered retail sector as people lined up to receive the first half of the $10,000 government handout. Those using e-payment platforms, including Tap & Go, Alipay, and WeChat Pay, clicked on the app to get $5,000, which they have to spend before the end of October. But Octopus users will receive the $5,000 in 2 installments. They can get $4,000 by tapping their cards at subsidy collection points in several transport centers, such as MTR stations and designated piers. Octopus users can also collect the voucher at any Welcome supermarket, including its subsidiaries, Marketplace and 360. And at any Circle K or 7-Eleven convenience store. But not at Park and Shop supermarkets. Another method is to download the Octopus app on a smartphone that has mobile readers or a near-field communication service and simply tap the cards on it. But as Octopus cards can only hold up to $3,000 at one time, the amount credited on the first tap depends on the stored value already in the card. As users spend the government handout, they can get the entire $4,000 with further taps. They have to spend their first installment by the end of a calendar month to get the remaining $1,000 on the 16th of the following month. The deadline is October 31st. Octopus Marketing Director Rita Lee said the company will launch various discounts after social distancing measures are relaxed in 2 weeks, as it has now partnered 2,500 more businesses. But it will not raise the $3,000 stored value limit because of convenience and flexibility, as well as legal concerns because the cards are not registered with the users' names. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
A scheme to safeguard jobs during COVID has been expanded to make more than 1.7 million workers eligible. But it will cost the government an extra $12 billion, taking the total to $43 billion. Macy Mock reports.
The government has extended the employment support scheme to cover more workers. Under the plan to protect jobs during the pandemic, employers will be offered cash to help pay each eligible worker $8,000 a month from May to July. The change will benefit an additional 440,000 employees, taking the total to 1.74 million. But it will cost the government an extra $12 billion. Lawmakers will be asked to approve the $43 billion needed. The scheme was originally aimed at helping small and medium-sized enterprises retain employees who earned below $30,000 a month, but after consultations, the salary cap was dropped. Up to 1,000 employees in each company can now benefit. Casual employees and part-timers can apply, but only for $4,000 per month. Self-employed workers and people aged 65 or above with an MPF account are also eligible. Under the earlier proposal, some businesses with more than 50 employees, such as supermarkets, were excluded. They can now apply, but only for a maximum of 100 workers. Meanwhile, 60,000 people who sought temporary unemployment relief will receive a one-off subsidy of $10,000 next Tuesday. About 360,000 applications have been received so far. Doris Ho, who heads the Policy Innovation and Coordination Office, said 30% of the applications that have been processed were rejected. That was because the applicant's previous salary was not within the eligible range of between $2,700 and $30,000. Or they were on no-pay leave but did not work in businesses that were forced to close because of government restrictions. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
China's biggest COVID outbreak in 2 years has shattered records again, with cases yesterday exceeding 20,000. With no immediate end in sight to the strict lockdown, Shanghai residents have gone online to vent their growing frustrations. Winner Wong reports.
Entire families, including children and the elderly, stuffed into small cubicles. Rubbish spilling into the hallways. Footage from an isolation facility in Nanhui district purportedly shows people having to elbow their way to food. Videos from frustrated Shanghai residents sent to quarantine centers are emerging faster than they can be shut down. Those who are not infected are hardly coping either, with no immediate end in sight to strict home confinement measures. The lockdown has been extended indefinitely because of soaring case numbers. The 26 million residents in the financial hub can only rely on government drop-offs or delivery services for groceries. But with systems overwhelmed and staff overworked, many face a shortage of food and basic necessities. Another video that outraged netizens shows a healthcare worker beating a pet dog to death. The corgi's owner in Pudong district had reportedly been taken to isolation, and the family was forced to leave it behind. Shanghai reported a record 19,660 new asymptomatic cases yesterday, along with 322 symptomatic infections. Jilin registered 2,500 cases. In total, the mainland had almost 23,000 locally transmitted cases yesterday, the highest one-day toll since the pandemic started more than 2 years ago. Winner Wang, HKIBC.
In Hong Kong, the daily COVID caseload has continued to decline, but health officials are recommending a fourth jab for the elderly.
Persons aged 60 years or above are recommended to receive the fourth dose 3 months after the third dose. This is taken into account of the high mortality rate among the elderly and also in the current epidemic. According to the local data, we found that the attack rate as well as the case fatality rate is very high among persons aged 60 years or above.
There were 2,644 COVID cases registered today, as infections stayed in 4 digits for nearly 2 weeks. 97 deaths were recorded today. I'll set the government's scientific committee will review medical data to see whether non-elderly people should also receive an extra dose of the vaccine. Unvaccinated people who have recovered from COVID have been advised to take their first jab 1 month after the infection, instead of 3. Chief Executive Carrie has refused to comment on whether she supports her former number 2, John Lee, in his bid for the city's top job, but she outlined the attributes her successor should have.
Every chief executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region should possess the quality to understand fully the dual accountability of the chief executive. He or she is responsible to the Central People's Government, but at the same time to the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. That the chief executive will need to have a very good grasp of this unique principle of one country, 2 systems, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy. And so whoever possesses these qualities, I'm sure will be able to do the job well.
Lam said there is currently no arrangement to appoint a new chief secretary. She said Beijing will consider Lee's resignation and his replacement. Lam added that despite having no chief secretary at the moment, the work will be carried out by the government. John Lee, meanwhile, appears to have begun his election campaign even before his resignation as chief secretary was made official. Sources say he has hired Hong Kong's top delegate to the National People's Congress, Tam Yu Chung, as his campaign manager. Raymond Tam, the former Constitutional and Mainland Affairs chief, will also lead the team. 3 agents have been appointed to take care of election expenses. They include Sino Group Deputy Chairman Darryl Ng and Pauline Ng, former Secretary General of the Legislative Council Secretariat. An office has also been set up in Central Plaza in Wan Chai. Overseas, Russian troops in Ukraine have reportedly withdrawn from areas near the capital Kyiv to concentrate on the east. As fighting continued, Ukraine urged the West to provide it with more arms and hurt the Russian economy. Winner Wong reports.
This has become a familiar scene in Severodonetsk, a city in eastern Ukraine. Its residents have been huddling in underground shelters as Russian troops bombarded their homes non-stop. Police have been trying to find people hiding in schools and other buildings to take them to safer places.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd have to leave, said this elderly woman, adding that she wants to die in peace after first experiencing war at the age of 3. The Russian military has now almost completely retreated from areas near the capital Kyiv to focus on eastern Ukraine. Authorities in Luhansk and Donetsk urged residents to leave while they still can. NATO foreign ministers, meanwhile, met to discuss their next steps. Ukraine is not a member, but its foreign minister traveled to Brussels to present Kyiv's demands.
My agenda is very simple. It has only 3 items on it. It's weapons, weapons, and weapons.
NATO provides support to Ukraine, but NATO is not sending troops to be on the ground. We also have a responsibility to prevent this conflict from escalating beyond Ukraine and become even more deadly.
In his daily video address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said new Western sanctions against Moscow were not enough and called for a boycott of Russian oil and banks. He said only painful sanctions would stop Russia. Winner Wong, HKIBC.
Hong Kong investors remained nervous today as the Hang Seng Index slid 1.2% on fears that the mainland's worsening COVID outbreak could hurt the economy. The retreat was again led by tech giants, with benchmark heavyweight Alibaba losing 2.2%. E-commerce rival JD.com gave up 3.2%. Earlier in the day, it announced that its president, Su Lei, took over as chief executive, succeeding founder Richard Liu. Food delivery firm Meituan dropped 1% after shooting up 7.2% at the open. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng ended the day down by 271 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Meituan lost $1.60, Tencent dropped $6.60, while Alibaba was down $2.40. Kuaishou Technology shed $3.30, while JD.com lost $7.60. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.55, pound sterling 10.25, while the Australian dollar at 5.86. Finally, in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down 10 points. On to the weather now. Expect more sunshine as we head into the weekend. Temperatures for the coming days will range between 21 and 28 degrees. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.